All right. G'day, everyone. This is Rangadad. Not financial advice, just the way I'm looking at the market. Um, Today, I'm not going to spend too much time on the normal stuff that I go through. I actually had a look at, I did a bit of a deep dive into Bitcoin versus stable coins and also total crypto market caps versus altcoins, versus stable coins. And found some interesting relationships, um, probably more so uh, in the total crypto market cap. If you do this, you can do this same thing for the total crypto market cap excluding BTC, and it actually makes a lot of sense as to why. Well, it just shows you how beat down and how uninterested the market is in altcoins at the moment. And I don't think it's necessarily disinterest. I think there's too many, and we're going through the dot-com boom type moment where there's a lot of them that just don't have a business model that's going to be successful. Not necessarily because it's not a good idea or anything like that. It's just for whatever reason, someone else is going to get the lion's share of that particular market, and you're going to have the winners and the losers out of the altcoin market the same way you had it out of the dot-com boom. But let's look at this for the time being. Now, I've done it this way. A lot of people put stablecoins on top of like stablecoins divided by Bitcoin, etc. I just find this a little bit easier to get my head around. So I'm hoping that works better for you guys as well. Now, I'll show you what I did. So this is the way I did it originally with it inverted. So stablecoins versus total crypto market cap. And just looking at trend lines. So, oh, fuck. I need to save this. Sorry. Oops. USDT plus USDC plus. I don't know if DAI really makes a difference, but I think it's still the third biggest. So figured I'd include it. So what I found was obviously like this bottoms at the same time the market bottoms, but what like that's what you'd expect. There's a couple of interesting things to take from this though, and I think we can actually use this to predict major shifts in Bitcoin's price. So predicting tops and things like that actually gets a little bit easier with this particular chart. So if we just look at, let's say this run up here, what you're looking for a turnaround or potential turnaround is you're looking for Bitcoin to form some structure that has some trend lines. So, for instance, if we went and drew a trend line through the highs here, as Bitcoin's coming down, when it breaks that trend line, you can be pretty confident that that's actually the start of a decent move. Okay. And that's what happened. It went up and kept going up. Now, obviously, we went up and we pulled back, and the same sort of thing. I'll just zoom in on this a bit. same sort of thing on the way up. You can actually say, well, okay, we've got a little bit of a trend line going here. Once you see that trend line sort of forming, you can actually draw it in, and basically when you get a break of that trend line, then that's a shift in momentum, shift in likely price action. So basically you're looking for it to come down from there, and that's what Bitcoin does. And then basically you're looking for the same thing the other way. Again, big break of that trend line, big move to the upside. Again, we can do the same thing through here. And you got to be a little bit careful of fake outs and stuff. There are some cases where you effectively get a retest of the trend line and then it moves away. And you won't necessarily get the absolute high with this, but it shows you when you got to really get out of spot. And even realistically, when you're around this point here, you could be drawing a trend line like that and looking for the break. And big breaks like this of trend lines are typically a really good sign that that's the high has been put in. Now, another way you can get a little bit more accurate, I guess, with your break of trends and getting closer to the high is potentially the cross of like two moving averages. I haven't put momentum on this or anything yet. I haven't gone that far, but when your 9 and your 13, for instance, are crossing, then chances are that's another good sign that you're going down. Okay, but that in this case that happened on that same candle. All right. But I would suggest also that when you're getting sort of close to these levels, you need to be being careful and getting out of the market as well. So sort of taking profits on the way up here is a good thing. The other thing is there is some cases where there's horizontal supports as well, which can be good indications that that you've broken a major trend. In particular, another thing is making lower highs on this versus higher highs on price. So that there was a pretty good indication when we turned down from that point that you were making a lower high on this, but a higher high on Bitcoin. That's bearish divergence every day of the week. The other thing too is decent breaks of the key moving averages. Not it's not a great one, but certainly if you're down here, you want to be looking at these sort of trend lines and breaks of those trend lines. So that realistically was the start of the big move in the end of 2020. It never really looked back from there. And then if you come through, there is a pretty good trend line there. So as long as you're touching and breaking back to the upside, you can be pretty confident you're still going up. There's some pretty violent moves in there for price action, but realistically, as long as you're holding that initial trend line, things are looking still okay. It's just when you're looking at divergences that you start to get a little concerned. So you can go into the shorter time frames on this as well and really look for big turnarounds. So this one here, you could potentially, if you're looking at it on the daily and you say, well, okay, we're getting close to this line, let's look and see what it's going to do. You can go down to the 15-minute or the 1 hour time frame. Probably the 1 hour is more important. and you can actually look for breaks of key trend lines on that as well. So that's the main thing I wanted to cover today. This here, and I'll do the current price action that we've got, and you can look at like really long range trend lines here. So, and these trend lines tend to be better than trend lines on the actual price action chart. So it found the low, like the spike low back here in this range when Bitcoin, I need another chart, hang on. So when Bitcoin spiked down here, that was where it hit. That was where it sort of hit this trend line and rejected off it. Okay. So they can provide really good indications of, all right, we're probably at a pretty good buy point here. And same deal, once we actually broke this trend here, you know, Bitcoin went on a really good run. So this is pretty important for Bitcoin price action. Now, we have broken a key trend there. And this is where I wanted to come to. So when you look at that, that's a pretty good trend line. We've broken that, retested it, and we're moving away. Bitcoin looks like it's heading for this level. The other thing is too, we did have a fairly strong, sorry, wrong one, fairly strong horizontal trend line through here. That, yeah, broke below it a little bit, but it reclaimed it quite quickly every time, and we broke below that. The other thing was there was a trend through here. You could have been looking at a trend through the tops as well. And the fact that we spiked here and we never even got close to that trend line suggested we were going further down. And the fact that we sort of rejected this point and we haven't crossed that 9 and 13, I think that's what I got on there. Hang on. Yeah, 9 and 13. The momentum's to the downside. So, you know, we never actually crossed back to the upside on that one. This is, to me, suggesting that we're probably going back to this key trend line here. Now, what happens at that point will be critical for understanding where Bitcoin's headed. It's also worth noting that there, like before we get too bearish, there is a support line through there. We've hit it a number of times. There was, you could, I mean, it's, you need to draw ranges with the horizontal ones on this because it just spikes around so much. But there is a key level through there that has been hit and rejected from both directions multiple times. We basically got into that region, and so far we have bounced up, but at this stage, the momentum on this is squarely to the downside. And we can look at, let's look at, sorry, do that. So if you put momentum and BBWP on, the momentum here was headed down, and that candle there, because it was just so massive and such a big shift from bottom to top, the momentum has kind of switched back to the upside of the signal line, but at the moment it looks like it's rolling over and BBWP is still increasing. So at this stage, this chart here is telling me that Bitcoin may not be done to the downside yet. But it's also telling me that we've broken a key trend on this, and we may have found the top of this market already. So, and funny thing is, we only just cleared the top of this total crypto market cap versus stable coins from the initial high of that 6 month range that we had. So to me, that's not a great sign. It just shows you that the liquidity in the system, one, it is nowhere near what it was in previous cycles. Like, and what it also tells me is a lot of people are holding stables. There's probably a lot of people that are trading rather than holding, like in comparison at the moment. But stable coins have become a massive thing in crypto, and it kind of makes sense. But it's just something that I don't think we're ever going to get back up into these areas. I think stable coins are going to be here to stay. But yeah. I mean, the other thing too, if you wanted more confirmation that we found the lows last cycle, last bear market, we basically had a gigantic trend line there, and it like that there was when crypto was looking like it had actually found its base. Like crypto was I think Bitcoin was somewhere a bit over 20K, and then that there was the FTX crash. So we sort of reclaimed that trend line, but as soon as we broke it again, realistically, we didn't really look back from there. So in terms of macro analysis, this chart is really useful, and yeah, just based on this, I'm not going to be buying crypto until I see a turnaround in this. Like it doesn't make sense to do that. The other thing is, if you're looking to find, peaks and troughs and stuff like that, there are some pretty good trend lines that you can draw on this as well. And again, you're not going to be necessarily picking the high, but that's again, we've broken this trend line here as well. If we close here today, then I would expect more downside. And that actually ties in with the majority of the other stuff I've been looking at on Bitcoin. So hopefully that makes sense. If there's any questions or anything, throw them into the chat. But yeah, I don't think many people are looking at this chart, certainly not in this way. But when I went back and had a look at all the previous highs and lows and things like that, it just makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that was about all I wanted to go through on that one. You can even go back to like I think it caught, yeah, that was the 2019 high. I think that was the peak after the initial drop, because we peaked into 2018. I think 2017, 2018. But yeah, you can pretty much do that analysis the whole way through, and it doesn't look super insightful until you get down into the shorter time frames. But even the daily, if you're looking at macro moves, when to just buy spot Bitcoin and sell spot Bitcoin, this is a pretty good indication of when you should be doing that. But yeah, for the time being, we do have a fair bit of support below, but you're going to be talking about areas that are basically back down to the breakout, which would be the CME gap fill. If we get back down into here, that would basically be suggesting we're going to get back to the CME gap fill. All right. So I guess be careful. We could spike back up into here, but I'd be expecting some resistance from this trend line, and from this horizontal line, or this region. And we kind of have already bounced and retested this trend line. So I'm certainly not going to be looking to buy anything for a while. And again, you do this with altcoins, and it doesn't look great either. So that's, I'll switch back over in a second. I'm just making sure I got this in the charts. Let's go back into Bitcoin in general. We are still holding, for the time being, this trend line. It is the point of control as well. So bounces up would still, on that other chart, if we bounced up from here, you're probably still going to get rejection from this trend line as well. What you want to see is a turn of these. You're not necessarily going to, pick the bottom, but if you want to be really confident that you might have a decent move to the upside coming, then crossing of the two moving averages, and you could probably do shorter time frame, like shorter length moving averages for a daily, but yeah, it's worthwhile noting that even on sort of the 4 hour, they're squarely positioned to the downside here. Obviously, we do have some vectors in there as well. We have recovered this vector here on the 4 hour. Strong rejection off that level. I mean, this doesn't look like Bitcoin is going to be going up from here. In fact, BBWP is increasing. It looks like it wants to accelerate to the downside a little bit. So if you want to try and pick bottoms and stuff, this is the chart you're probably going to want to have. Just be looking for horizontal support and resistance and key trend line breaks. So yeah, the only thing here is point of control may provide support. The top of this channel may provide support as well, but there's a lot of downside pressure, I would say, at the moment. We haven't had a lot of price action on the shorter time frames today either. So yeah, the momentum shifted to the downside though. Like, it's not an aggressive move. It still wouldn't surprise me if we do actually have a bit of a bounce here. But again, that 1 hour 200 EMA is going to be critical on Bitcoin. And I think a vector candle recovery is a possibility here. But I would actually expect further downside from there. Just to keep it really simple. And it would make sense to have a bounce off the point of control again. But yeah, I'm not expecting it to get back above the value area high around 99k. If we do, that could change things. But for the time being, I'm not seeing it. Need to see shift in momentum. There are some coins that are still holding better than Bitcoin, like Litecoin seems to want to hold this range. Sui's not. Solana's not. H-bar is not. Hype is. Hype's an interesting one. Most of them aren't. Well, like it would make sense. So if these recover this wick here, it would make sense to have a decent bounce off them. Or like off the bottom, somewhere near the bottom. But I suspect that bounce is going to be met with, it'll be a dead cat bounce at this stage, from what I'm seeing. Yeah, most of these don't look great. AI funds finding a bit more of a base here than some of the other altcoins. Grass finding a base. Carve, unlucky. Yeah, that's momentum is to the downside. These are all breaking key levels as well. Like for near to be breaking these levels, for us to be expecting a new all-time high anytime soon seems to be a little far-fetched, but see what happens when it gets down to the bottom of the wick on Bitcoin, if that's where we're going. It's going to have to be a massive injection of interest in Bitcoin at the moment. And Bitcoin doing this with the news the way it is, and the fact that the US are looking into how they're going to regulate crypto, and there's a lot more certainty around there. The SEC is becoming a lot more friendly to crypto companies, all that sort of stuff, and Bitcoin's dropping. That's the big guys selling into people that think it's going to go to the moon. But yeah, the landscape's changed. I think the focus is going to be on value and actual product and product acceptance and like daily active users type stuff rather than TVL. TVL's not really a measure of how good a product is necessarily, depending on what your product is, obviously, but All right, have a quick look at NAS. NAS is still grinding. Momentum's actually ticked to the upside on NASDAQ. Equal weight actually, I wouldn't get too excited until it breaks this high here, but equal weight's actually looking okay. And this is the thing, like Bitcoin could still follow the market if we do go on a big run on general markets. But I'd be expecting that you need to see that turnaround. And I'd still be expecting some resistance around those key trend lines. if we break back above areas, like breaking out of those key trend lines, then I'd be happy to go long, because typically a break of those key trend lines has been massive long for Bitcoin. So I'll be covering that each day as well. RSP, so equal weight, S&P 500, looks like it wants to at least recover this vector. It's been an interesting week. I'm kind of surprised that S&P 500 hasn't pulled back a little bit more, but services PMI's dropped back a little. I'm surprised we haven't had a reaction from that. Market obviously doesn't care about that one. Non-farm payrolls will be a big one. Yeah, look, I mean, even XLI is kind of getting close to a reset on stochastic momentum. XLY, XLP is pulling back a little bit. That's not ideal. Still above that trend line on staples versus SPY. Wow, equal weight XLY, XLP is breaking new highs again. This thing's just been a monster. Makes me wonder if it's broken, but it's generally suggesting that the market's okay with things at the moment. This one here, this is equal weight XLP versus SPY, staples versus SPY. It's still going down, so at this stage, more market up. And it's a little concerning that Bitcoin's going down when the rest of the markets are going up. Makes me think there is something going on where we may form a base and at least try and retest some of those trend lines to the upside on the total versus stables. Even KRE looks like momentum shifting back to the upside. Again, break of that trend line and happy days for markets. And this looks like a good rejection of that key level there on ITB as well. I mean, it needs it. We need ITB to go on a run. Same with XHB. Semiconductors. That's not a bad showing given that AMD disappointed, I think. DJI gold's at a critical level. Gold is going on a pretty decent run though too. This DJT versus gold, the fact that we haven't seen a reaction from the market, like a massive reaction from the market, surprised me a little bit based on this break, because that is there's a fair bit of importance to that level, I would think. VIX pulling back a little bit, still haven't hit that trend line, so maybe tomorrow we'll get a bit of pullback starting, but the skew did bounce, so that's, I guess, that's a good read on today, because today the market has bounced. Yeah, the skew is probably one where we want to be on the lookout for lower highs too on the bounces. So for the time being, that was a slightly lower high, but wouldn't suggest it's a major turnaround at the moment. See here, we got a lower high on the skew right at the peak of actually the Bitcoin market and S&P 500. Again, another lower high here led to big drop. Yeah, it's been a pretty good read on when the market's topping out. VIX 1 day. Again, it hasn't started back to the upside yet, so that's suggesting that further upside on the S&P 500 at least. As long as this is pulling back, then you'd expect the market to keep going up. DAX, yeah, going for that gap fill. Hong Kong market pull back a little bit. UK market covered that vector candle. It does kind of look like it wants to, like that measured move there. Yeah, it depends if you go off the leg up, like an equal weight sort of leg up. I mean, there's a lot of this sort of stuff that suggests the markets should actually go up and make a new all-time high, at least on the stock market. Bitcoin's looking shaky, but if Bitcoin finds a base off those levels, then yeah, it could go on a run as well. But I'm just it's hard to go against those trend lines when they've been like accurate for at least 8 years, 9 years. TLT is getting a bid as well. So TLT I would expect to go to at least up around 91. Leave that there this time. High yield junk. As we said, it looks like it at least wants to come into this vector candle, but I'd expect some resistance soon on that. But again, if high yield junk keeps going, then the market's going to keep going. Not seeing a turnaround on a lot of the indicators that were still potentially suggesting downside. But yeah, as I pointed out yesterday, the rejection from this trend line on yields was going to suggest that Dixie go down, yields go down, market goes up. I think that's the main thing at the moment. So Dixie, or sorry, US 10U may find some support soon. So that could lead to the pullback we are getting reasonably extended. The other thing to look at though, just want to see if we've got a decent bid at the lows yet. Not quite yet. Let's go to 20 largest. So sentiment actually continued to the upside yesterday. And that's actually at a level that we haven't seen moving to the upside since the start of, well, basically since the bottom of that first dip there. The other time we saw it sort of above that or moving up from there was towards the top of that. even sort of the recovery from this little dip here in the S&P back in June in 2024. So, but at the same time, you look at it here, the last time before that was basically just after the first little dip near the top in what's that, March 2024. So, I mean, the fact that these guys are starting to pile in smart money, or at least get more confident in the market, it could be a sign that they're looking to get in so they don't miss out. But I wouldn't use this as actionable stuff. It could just mean that they're starting to feed some money in because they have had a little pullback in the last week or so. Doesn't necessarily mean that everything's just going to go up. Have a quick look at Coinbase. That's Mara. Won't worry about them today. Coinbase hasn't had anything major come through. Generally been sideways since that big trade there. Not a huge read. Mara's pulling back a little bit more. Wow, there's a lot of shorts in there. Spot is still generally like cumulative volume delta. Spot based on CoinAnk is still pulling back. That's not a great sign. We do have a trend line up here as well, sort of time frames that probably going to be pretty important to break above, but I'd also suggest the top of the channel that's in here and that 200 EMA on the 1 hour is a key level of resistance, most likely. And a move into that area would soak up a lot of the liquidity that's come into the chart recently in terms of shorts. A little bit of a tick up in futures CVD here, but nothing to really write home about. Open interest is starting to increase a little bit, but that's non-directional as well. A lot of buying volume coming through on this dip, so we could be finding a base here. It's just there's no real read either way at the moment. You've still got some vector candles in here to recover. Looking at the 4 hour, 48 hour, sorry, liquidation levels. There's a lot of shorts in the system up around 103. There is a lot higher up too if we go out to 3 months. More down here though. So you look at that chart and you say, well, yeah, okay, we might be going up and collect more of this, but at this stage, like recovery of these levels down in here would basically be a retest of that lower trend line on this chart. Well, sorry, it'd probably be a retest of that. Actually, full recovery of the 75 would probably be a retest of this level here. want to find some, and you would find some support off that. I think. I don't think it's going to break straight through that because we'd be literally going straight down to 30s, 40s. So yeah, I think a retest of the 85 level. 85 was a pretty cool looking level as well from liquidation point of view. That would probably be a retest of this horizontal support line. It's hard to sort of predict that. It's just gut feel on that one because it's not really a linear relationship that you can use. So what did we see with Chinese 2-year? So 2-year yields in China dropped back a little. So the 10-year, I think that's true. Yeah. So they both pulled back a little. Copper's breaking out. So that's a positive sign. There is reason to be positive on this market. Gold breaking out is probably not like it's an overall economy sign. I think that the economy's not in a good place, but the market, in terms of the market, it looks pretty reasonable. Dixie's pulling back. So you'd kind of expect Dixie to keep pulling back, to be honest. Momentum shifted to the downside. That's a good sign. Double top. Expect probably, if you're looking at it as a double top, then 1043, which is pretty close to a fairly key level previously. If you're looking at it as a neckline break, then let's go top, like a head and shoulders break. Then the 200 EMA here, pick up the bottom of this, somewhere around there, 105 and a half, 105 is probably a target level. So again, that's a positive sign for market. I think even the euro is actually getting it's back above that trend line. So at the moment, this is the worst thing for Bitcoin, just because Bitcoin really struggles to make new highs if this is going down. And it looks like it is actually ticking back to the downside. And we have had the Chinese markets back in business now. So this is a proper read that I would actually trust now. It might just be sort of finding a base here maybe, but I'd like to see this turn around for Bitcoin to be going up. So yeah, typically Bitcoin has found its lows when this thing has spiked low as well. That one there was a start of the major move up on Bitcoin. Not an exact read, but pretty good confluence. Okay, what else we got? Yeah, percentage of stocks above 50-day moving average is up a little bit as well. Good sign. Mag 7's pulling back a little. Still got that trend line intact. Tesla's pulling back. Kind of expected that. That's actually BBWP increasing while it's pointing to the downside, I'd still expect Tesla to come back into that 300 level. At this stage, it could get a bounce just based if the market in general goes up. Tesla's not really one I would want to trade at the moment. Super hard to gauge because it goes off emotion quite a bit. Google got smashed. That's a massive drop. Top to bottom, nearly 10%. Earnings, they had a little surprise to the upside on earnings per share, but revenue's down. Not by much, but it is down. I think investors apparently didn't like the fact that they're planning on spending 75 billion on AI infrastructure versus an expected like 25 billion or something like that. Hi, Dad. I think we might be screwed for a little while longer, but there is a chance we bounce relatively soon. I just don't think we're going to new all-time highs anytime soon. We would have to have a big change in sentiment overall on the stock market, and at the moment, I'm not really seeing it. Yeah, time to be cautious. I'm just sticking to my guns and trading crypto rather than holding crypto at the moment. Microsoft still looks like it wants to come back to the upside. So if the markets do have an up wave in general, these things will come up and fill their gaps. So Microsoft should get up pretty close to that gap up into the 440s. But that's when I'd probably be expecting the market to peak this year. See, ARK's moving to the upside. That's telling me that risk is on still. Might have some resistance here, but we're getting into key levels. Like the market hasn't broken key trend lines to the upside yet, and it's getting close to testing them. So I am expecting a pullback soon on markets, and I think Bitcoin being so low at the moment, it's probably going to make its final move to the downside for this particular dip first. We may get a bit of a red weekend, but I would expect it to find a bottom and it would bounce, have a decent dead cat bounce before we put in the proper lower high and confirm bear market started. And if Bitcoin goes into a bear market before the S&P 500 is showing it, then I think that's a pretty good sign to be rotating out of any sort of stocks, to be honest. Rotating back into cash. Meta, yeah, these are all starting to struggle at the highs now. AMD got punished as well. So this is a pretty good level though. Like I had that on the charts yesterday suggesting if the market doesn't like the earnings, that's the potential low. So again, these things are getting hammered though. Like a break to the downside of that trend line is going to look really nasty for the market in general. But it's a pretty good point for a bounce. So this is the thing, like the market looks like it it does actually want to go up. A lot of the leading indicators like bonds and stuff like that are coming back to the upside. Yields are coming down, dollars coming down. That suggests upside pressure. And there doesn't seem to be anything that's really freaking it out at the moment, apart from tariffs. I think that was an excuse to wipe out some liquidity, over leverage people. SMCI, yeah. We're in ranges at the moment with a lot of stuff, so need to break out or break down. And yeah, it's just a lot of them look like vector candle recoveries. We need to break previous highs. Not looking great. Coal World Athletics. How about XCN? Honestly, see, this is the other thing. Bitcoin market cap is actually still quite high. Does look like it wants to pull back though. XCN US dollar. Oh, Jesus. Oh yeah, I remember seeing this on Bybit. The likelihood of this thing getting to its all-time high is basically zero for me at the moment, unless this has massive user adoption and has a really good business case. I don't expect that to keep going up. Especially like if Bitcoin's found its top. Let's make this a little bit. Yeah, I'd be inclined to sort of look at a break of this trend line, break of that to the upside, and then yeah, you may actually get some pretty good upside. Break of this one to the downside, and you're probably going to come back and retest the 0.4 cents levels, especially if Bitcoin drops the range. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Geez, it got a pump on listing on freaking Bybit or whatever it did. What a wild ride if you hold on to this one. Anyway, quick look at ETH. So ETH actually looks healthier than Bitcoin at the moment in terms of just today's candle, but yeah, I mean, this wick here, you've got to be really concerned about that, especially when we continued to the downside today and haven't really broken back above this candle today. There is a support line potentially through here that it's testing. Yeah, that's actually not a bad trend line, but that's your last ray of hope for Ethereum, I think. That, and sorry, there is a decent horizontal one as well, which I forgot about. But that one there, it does look like it's just going to close above it. I mean, these are ranges as well. They're not specific lines, but if we're breaking down below this trend line, I would be suggesting that we're going a bit deeper, at least back down into 2,400, I would think. That's one of the nastiest candles I've ever seen. Crazy. CME is holding this trend line as well. So CME doesn't look anywhere near as bad as general crypto. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Oops. I'll draw this in. And CME breaks below that, I would be getting a little bit more concerned. That would probably fill this gap down to 77 on CME, which would see 75 on the rest of crypto. Yeah, for the time being, momentum's to the downside on CME and BBWP is increasing. So if we're going to have a bounce here, you want to see that bounce in probably the next day or so. And with increasing BBWP, that could actually lead us on a decent run. So again, it's just the risks are quite high with that play based on what I'm seeing with stablecoins versus BTC. But we've also got, like, BlackRock is still accumulating BTC. MicroStrategy's stopped. MicroStrategy falling apart is probably going to mark the bottom of the next bear market, I would say. But yeah, I wouldn't be super hopeful of a bounce here, but CME definitely is providing more hope in there than a lot of the other charts. It's kind of a nothing day. If we close as a doji here, it's just basically going to be a nothing read. We need to break one direction or another. ETP in Europe, West Asia. So there's a lot of positive news that's come through for Bitcoin recently, and it's just flat to down. It could just be the market trying to get out leverage long retail, or just get retail out in general. We just need to find decent support, which point of control is if we slip below, we close below on the daily below that point of control, then downside is more likely. I'd suggest even on a 4-hour, like a 4-hour close below that point of control and back into this channel here, that would suggest we're going to come down to at least the mid band of that channel, if not to this other trend line here around 88. So that's your last point of hopium there too. If we don't bounce off 88, then 75. Okay, we do still have some support here. It did, the 4-hour actually bounced off the value area low, so that could form a key support on the way down. But at the moment, point of control is providing support. So just want to see some of these moving averages cross back to the upside. So sorry I can't be more definitive than that. It's been a slow day on crypto. Probably want to look at this here as a trend line as well. If we can hold that and even break above as a wedge, breaking above that on the 4-hour, then yep, no problem saying upside for LTC, that is. Bitcoin looks a lot different. So LTC is trading different to Bitcoin, that's for sure. Yeah, it does look like a bull flag that we're putting in at the moment. So there's the flagpole. This here's the bull flag. We just want that to break to the upside. They're the key things to look for at the moment. XRP is getting punished as well still. But again, these are kind of still looking like bull flags. Until we break down some of these flags, can't really be too bearish. It's only that it's only really this chart here that is still a concern for me. Even if we go through like right at the bottom here, the bottom of these ones. Again, it is a range. If we bounce off this, if we cross some of these key moving averages, let's change it to a 5 and a 9, see what that does. Even there, that was a fake out, so you're probably better off going with the longer term ones. Look, that's at the moment, it looks like that might be support. You really want that to be support if you're a bull. Okay, on that note, I'm going to leave it there. I'll catch us tomorrow.